Awesome, Jerry. And quick rundown of me. I am a corporate trainer at Fisher Holmes. I've been there for about 3 years now. My primary focus for the last couple years has been training up our field managers, the folks working in the field. And so we've found ourselves there with getting really green folks that don't have a lot of construction experience, and we're trying to find out how to attract them, how to retain them, how to set them up for success. And we have since been building a very comprehensive training program that has that we've been flying for about almost 10 months now. That can get them. Our goal is to get them up to speed in 6 months. Not that they're going to know everything they need to know about building a home in 6 months, but can they be effective in 6 months? If you weren't here last time, my background, I got a bachelor's from UC. I got a master's in education from College of Mount St. Joe. I taught high school math for a little bit. I worked with Rhett for about 7 years at Torch Prep. Last 3 years I've been at Fisher Holmes. So I am extremely excited about today. I told Jerry I planned out 3 days of training. This is the second of those three. Some of you guys were at the first one, which was great. Of the three, this is the one I'm most excited about, and I think is going to make the biggest impact. So very excited about that. But before we get into today, let's do a quick recap of last time. If you weren't here, or if you were here, let's just kind of refresh our minds, because all these ideas work really well together, right? The first one, we reflected on building that culture with our people, right? We realized, like what I tried to convey last time, is that training and development, learning, growth, getting that knowledge out of your experts' heads and getting it into the novices' heads begins with culture. It begins with the relationships. And we reflected on these 3-question framework from Lou Holtz, who is a very successful and prolific Notre Dame coach and college football coach. But he would say this is the 3 questions that anyone asks of any leader is, can I trust you? Are you committed? Do you care about me? We reflected on how the new folks are coming in would answer these questions about you, about your organization, about the people they're working with. The next thing we talked about is the gradual release model. And this is a great mentoring training model. And we got the Conduit pick right there, which is super exciting. A little plug for Conduit there. I do, you watch. I do, you help. You do, I help. You do, I watch. And we talked about how steps 2 and 3 are the ones that are typically skipped out on the job, right? It's kind of like, and Jerry, I don't think I'm throwing him under the bus saying this is so common. When we think about what does it take to train someone, we just say, just show up. Yeah. Just get there. Just be on the job. And what you really have to learn is that's not super helpful, right? And we're going to actually talk about why we jump to that conclusion so easily. But when you are in that mindset, what happens is, and there's actually an additional step that we could put down here, if you're skipping steps 2 and 3, you go, I do, you watch, you do, I watch, I get frustrated and tell you you're not doing it right? Or I get frustrated and just go, just get out of the way. Let me do it, right? And that's what happens when we skip steps 2 and 3. And the very last thing we talked about was this, who was your +1? And that's what these +1 tokens are on the table for. We finally got the stickers. Anybody got their token? All right, still got it? All right. And so if you didn't get a token last week, you can get one on the table there. But the basic idea was this, that we are talking about a massive problem. The trade shortage issue, right? The issue, it's a huge, complex problem. And much in the same way that we talk about how to eat an elephant, one bite at a time, right? How do we solve the massive trade shortage, the massive issues that we're dealing with, one individual at a time? And so what I encourage you to do is have this token, and then in your own mind, reflect on who this token would represent for you. Who's that one person that if every one of us put one drop in the bucket, it would start filling pretty quickly if we focused on that. And so that's what this token. Put in your pocket, constantly reminding you to invest in your +1. I am just curious, for anyone that was here last week, did this create any cool opportunities for you? Did this prompt you, remind you? Did you have any good moments with a +1 in the last 30 days? I'd love to hear from someone or a couple people.
It's a good calming thing because I rotated my fingers in my pocket.
I did too. I seriously was like, it was like a fidget thing. I'm just like playing with it. Absolutely. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, my plus one I met in '97, and I just got to spend the day with him at a buying group conference last week. And for your career, there's really nothing more rewarding
Yeah.
than seeing somebody else that you helped a little bit along the way. I mean, this guy would be fine without having ever met me.
Sure.
But he got to do some higher level stuff, I think, because of that. And, you know, nobody was talking about this back then, but boy, I lucked out. I found a good one, and I would just encourage everybody at that point to do that. And I'm still looking for a new one, but
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
you know,
That's great.
there's a reward.
100%.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Good. Well, all right. Well, keep that person in mind. Keep your token. Grab one if you didn't get it. It's there just to put in your pocket to be that reminder to invest in one and really shrink this problem from being massive and complex to being pretty simple. We're looking for one-on-one interactions to develop people. And when we do, that's when things start changing and growing, right? All right. So let's jump into today. So like I said, this is the one I'm most excited about. Not only is this the one I'm most excited about, I think that this is the one where you're going to have the biggest breakthrough. I know I'm overselling it there, all right? But I think I can deliver on it. Because I think last week, I think it was just good content. I think if you sat in last week, you're like, man, this is good. Like, I get it. That makes sense. I think you probably would have went, it makes sense. I think today is going to be stuff like, I never thought about that before. I've been having the same consistent issues and same consistent frustrations, and I haven't been able to articulate them, and I definitely didn't have a solution for it, right? That's what I feel like today is going to be. When I started training field managers, especially some of our veteran field managers at Fisher, this was the biggest issue that I saw. And this is the thing that started really making cracks in the challenges that we were having training new folks. So, that being said, we're going to be talking about something that I call the expert bias, or another word for that, another name for that is a curse of knowledge, and I'll explain what that means in a minute. But we're going to learn how to recognize it and manage it to more effectively transfer our knowledge, skills, and experiences. That's the big idea today. So here's what I want to do. Last week, we kind of came in and we were just hanging out with people that we knew already, which is cool. This week, if you haven't already, I would like you to get with someone that you don't know super well and get a few introductions down, okay? So here's what we're going to do. Find someone in the room, sit near them, sit with them. If you need to get up and change seats, do that, please. But I want you to make some quick introductions. You're all good? There you go. Make some quick introductions. Yeah, 3's fine. There you go. Or do we got someone in the back there? Do you need someone in the back? Oh, we got right there in the blue. There you go. All right, so real quick, guys, before you jump in. Listen up real quick. Listen up, guys. Listen up. Before you jump in, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get psychological, all right? I'm going to give you it's like a kind of like a Rorschach psychological exam here a little bit, but just hang with me. When you get your quick introductions, I'm going to give you a couple minutes. I'll give you about 5 minutes or so. I want you to look at these set of pictures, and I want to see if they prompt some kind of response out of you. So here's my question for you. Look at these pictures. I'll show you them to you in a minute. Reflect on where you or your organization are in your effectiveness in developing new people. So where are you in your effectiveness in training new people? Where's your organization in your effectiveness in training new people based on these images? So which one of these images resonates most with you? Can you guys see it in the back? With where you feel like you are in your effectiveness in training new people. So we got like the hands, astronaut, running a race, some signs, a fork in the road here, a ladder. Which one of these pictures just prompted a thought with where you feel like you are in your effectiveness? So introduce yourself and say, I pick question whatever for whatever reason. All right, go ahead. 5 minutes. People want to share what picture did you pick and why? What did it say to you? You could stay in your groups because we're going to be doing a couple other things together too. So, sorry, Jerry. Yeah, what'd you?
So the signs, to me, as far as where we are as an organization, I was sharing with Chad, we've been in business for 22 years. For the first probably 18 years, I just went like a bat out of hell and just, had to get the next job done, take on any type of work, every type of work, just never wanting to run out of work. For the last 4 or 5 years, I've been able to surround myself with some pretty good managers, pretty good people who kind of share the same vision, but the reason I went with the multiple signs is we still have to fine tune it again. We've started with the wagons and we fine tuned it a little bit, but there's still not a concise vision. There's a lot of different directions. You talk to one manager and we got a little bit of this, and the next manager a little bit of that. And we still have to unite a little bit better than we are right now.
Sure.
For the reason
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. Anyone else? What picture and why? Yeah.
Two pictures for me. Sorry, I broke.
That's the rule. You broke the rules. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. No, I'm kidding. No.
Take the pizza. So the first is the basket weave, because everyone's working as a team, so everyone's dependent on one person.
Yeah.
For the success of the group.
Yeah.
But then the ladder also stands out because as you're building and developing your company, you find that you are standing up there and you are trying to look out and produce and grow the business to where you want and need it to be.
Yeah.
And everyone else is holding that ladder and or standing and watching to take your lead to move forward.
Yeah. That's great. That's good. And the real idea here, folks, is that's a picture's worth 1,000 words. I mean, you can interpret this any way. It's like this is just meant to kind of break your paradigm a little bit, allow you to just maybe have a prompt to convey something in a way that you maybe haven't before. I'm really glad that resonated with many of you. And that is a lot of what we're going to be doing today. Is we're going to be working through some of those biases, some of those things that exist in your mind that you did not know that have been tripping you up for a long time. And again, I believe this is the most serious challenge that new folks have if they're new in a training role. Because what I've seen a lot in Fisher Homes and otherwise is a lot of people get in a position of training by being really good at something, right? It's like, hey, you're a great salesperson. You've been killing it. Why don't you train other people to do it exactly like the way that you do it? Man, you're a great carpenter. Nailing it out of the park. You have really figured this thing out. Let's put new folks with that guy because he's the best, right? But a lot of times we see breakdowns in that. And we talked about this last week, right? The skills that are required to be a carpenter, sell, are different than the skills required to train. And a lot of those frustrations and challenges could really be summed up in this word, this phrase, the curse of knowledge. That's what sociologists call it. And basically what the curse of knowledge is, and we hit on this a little bit last week, it is this idea that when you learn something, you immediately forget what it's like to not know. Immediately. It's gone. It's amnesia, right? And then not only that, you forget how you learned it. I can't tell you how many times when I'm building training at Fisher and I ask a field manager, how did you learn the difference? We mixed up seats and then we also went around and said our favorite animal.
You even saved me.
I know. No. We did save you some pizza. Right there. Right in front of Jerry there. There you go.
We shared what's the worst thing you've ever done that never told someone.
All right. But again, very good. So when you learn something, you immediately forget what it's like to not know it, and you forget how you learned it. Like Jerry put out a thing like learning to walk, or learning to ride a bike. How'd you learn how to ride a bike? I don't know. I just did it. But that's not true. We know that's not true. There was a process there, right? There was trial and error. When I ask a field manager when I'm building training, how'd you learn the difference between a footer and a foundation? I just learned it. I don't know. You just got to be there. But there's more to that, right? Yeah.
Do you feel like how much of this is, maybe you're going to get into this, but also the ability or interest in emotionally connecting with not knowing, like the feeling of being in the unknown versus the actual just like knowledge gap? Like, is there a need for the like to emotionally connect with the person?
Oh yeah, and we are going to get, that's probably the biggest thing we're going to focus on is empathy, empathy, connecting, right, with another person and framing things in the way that they would understand it. That's a huge part of it, right? But again, we see this constantly, right? That I think of the gruff old craftsman, right, that just gets furious when you challenge him, like, why do you do it that way? Because it's the right way. It's the way you're supposed to do it. Why is it the right way? It just is. I don't, like they can't, it's like that's the breakdown. That's the constant breakdown.
Or you don't.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Just an observation, my experience is when you have people that are really good at doing something, part of it is to make sure that they feel comfortable in the organization and that it's not a threat. Because they always say like the boiler repairman, the first thing he does when he figures out how to fix the boiler is throw the instructions in the fire.
Sure.
Because you don't want anybody else to know how to do your job. And it was actually manifested with one of my best guys. I was half joking with him, this was 2 or 3 months ago. And I said, hey, I need to start, because I was still in the documenting. I said, I really need to start videotaping kind of how you guys are doing things. And he looks at me and goes, you want to videotape how I do my job? You don't want to know how much that's going to cost you.
Oh,
I mean, it's a real, he was being somewhat playful, but it was genuine.
absolutely.
He thinks, oh, you're going to bring in some young pup, train him everything I know, then what do you need me for? So I think that's an obstacle that's out there.
Yeah.
The empathy and like showing your team that they're valued and I've been doing some things for him that I don't do for others. I think that's important.
Well, and
Yeah.
I think going back to the Lou Holtz stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it starts, there's a culture there.
Yeah.
Like that's cultural, right? We've got to really work on our organizations to the point where we believe that, and as you were sharing, that there's not only benefit to the organization, but you personally, for growing those skills in engaging with other people and training them up. There's growth opportunities. Like we got to work on our folks so that when people come in, because what happens there, you put a new guy with him. It's not only is he not willing to be videotaped, he's probably not super motivated to set someone up for success. And for me, I would think in that mindset you'd be like, well, yeah, he sucks. That's why I'm so great. Like that kind of mentality. So,
To be clear, in case this gentleman sees this video, he's very good with the
No.
but,
No,
I don't
yeah.
act like I get a phone call, hey, dude.
No, yeah.
He's good.
And yeah, no, but what you're sharing is a very real and honest challenge that we're dealing with. But again, it's like one of those things that I believe that this idea of the curse of knowledge is that thread in the sweater that if you pulled it, it would unravel the whole thing. I think that so many of those challenges that you run into, right, Jerry, we were talking about on the phone earlier, like, I tell it to my guys till I'm blue in the face, and they don't get it. What's the, like that challenge, that feeling, that all is linked back to the curse of knowledge. All right, so we've got I got another activity for you here. So don't open your envelope yet, but you're going to need your envelope that you have at your table there. You guys can work in a group of 3 over there. But here's what we're going to do. I'm actually recreating a real study that was done to prove this, the curse of knowledge, and it's really enlightening. But what I'm going to do is this. Each of you are going to take turns tapping and listening. Tappers and listeners, okay? You're going to pick a song. In your envelope, there's all kinds of just very common, everyday songs that people have heard a billion times, right? And you're going to pick a very common song, and you're going to tap it out for your partner, but you cannot, here's the deal, you cannot tell them, you cannot reveal the title of the song, you can't hum it, you can't mouth it, you can only tap. That's the only thing you can do. So here's an example. So let's say I open that envelope up, and I picked Happy Birthday. Without saying it, without revealing, without humming, I would have to go. Do you get it? Pretty simple. Do you guys? All right, so do this for me. In your envelope, each of you take turns picking a song, and I'm going to let you just pick until you find one that you know really well. There's a bunch in there. You just need one. Of the tapper. Like this is clear. It's a common song. Everyone knows the song.
I thought I had a stupid partner.
No. But then did you also feel the frustration of the listener? It's just a cacophony of tapping. Like, how could you ever get it? Right? Now, do you see how this illustrates an important point? Do you see how this maybe plays out in the workplace? when you have the song in your head, you forget what it's like to not have the song. You can't relate to the other person that doesn't have the song in their head. It's just frustrating. Like, how can you, this is the simplest thing, right? Right? I remember when I was a teacher, I used to be a math teacher, and this is a lesson that all teachers learn at some point. I'd have a class of kids, and I'll tell them, hey guys, there's a quiz on Friday. I said it twice a day. I wrote it on the board, right? They had it written in their agenda, but then Friday rolls around and I go, okay, it's time for the quiz. 5 kids go, there's a quiz today? What? I was like, I said it twice a day. It's written on the board. It's in your agenda. You had eye contact with me when I was telling you, right? Right? That's the curse of knowledge, right? That's what it's about. That's the big idea. So again, this is like the big movie villain that's pulling the strings behind the entire conflict of the plot. And at the end, it reveals himself. The curse of knowledge is behind it all. Those frustrations, those challenges, those breakdowns between your folks, it's the curse of knowledge. When you are an expert in something, you immediately forget what it's like to not know. You can't relate to the other person who doesn't know, and you forget how you learned it. You just know it. So let's talk about, so our focus today is going to be breaking that curse. 3 applications to break that curse of knowledge now that we've recognized it, okay? So again, this is how the curse of knowledge plays out in the workplace. I already explained this. How do you not know it? This is common sense. I hear that all the time. It's common sense. No one has common sense anymore. The thing you got to learn is there's no such thing as common sense. It doesn't exist, right? You read the email. How'd you miss it? Put it in the email. I remember when I started in my role, the person that was training me, their method of training me was just to CC me on every email that went out. And I would go, okay, cool. And I read every email. I'm like trying to do well. I read every email. But then what happened over and over and over again? I would go, oh, what are we supposed to do here? And they go, you were on the email. Did you not see it? It's like, no, I read it. Oh, really? And it was just it was a breakdown, right? How did I learn this? I don't know. I just learned it. The curse of knowledge. Okay, so let's talk about how we break the curse of knowledge. So 3 ways. The first way is to banish jargon. Man, this is a huge, important lesson for people in trade work. Your work is incredibly technical. In the culture that exists today, folks do not grow up in households where trade work's being done. Their parents haven't done it. They don't know how to do common things that was just maybe more common than it was. You can bemoan that, but it is just the reality. And so when you think they're coming onto your job, and your job is incredibly technical, and you're using jargon words, and what I mean by jargon is just industry lingo, right? Like that kind of thing. Well, this is a great quote that I love about jargon. This is Seth Godin. He said, the difference between jargon and lingo. Jargon is intentionally off-putting, and lingo reminds us how connected we are. They might look similar, but it's the intent that matters. Jargon is a place to hide, a chance to show off, and a way to disconnect. Right? That's what jargon. Lingo, on the other hand, allows us to feel included. And that's important because the pushback I always get with my folks is I'm like, you cannot use jargon when someone walks on the job. And your job is almost all jargon, right? And the challenge is like, well, they got to learn that. They got to learn those terms, and that's true, but there needs to be a process for how you get them in there, and you don't realize how detrimental it is early on, right? Here's a great example. I went through our scopes at Fisher. I went through our scopes and blueprints, and I found every jargon word I could find, and I put it on a slide. Here it is. And I'm sure you all in trade work are familiar with many of these terms, right? R value. You understand that's with insulation, right? CAZ, blocking. Some of these words that means a slab, that means something different in another context, right? A bevel, a stud, OC. But like what I hear a lot from people, first day on the job. Hey, go over there. Can you grab that stack of CAZ signs, put them over there by that footer, and then I need to get those SWIP forms. Can you run over there and get those SWIP forms from that other field manager? And that person's like, and then what happens is they feel stupid. They feel not welcome. They don't know what's going on, right? It's a major challenge. It's more of a challenge than you think it is. And just as an example, let me show you another slide. So you're more familiar with these terms, right? But what if I showed you these? This is from the medical industry. Another very technical industry, very similar to construction work in that way. Very technical. What if you showed up day one on your job and these were all the words that they were using? What if these were the words they were using to train you? What if these are the words they were using to evaluate you? Right? What if these were the words they were using to instruct you? Don't you think those first few months would be very stressful? They'd be speaking a foreign language. That's one of the biggest reasons why people are so stressed out in hospitals. Because it feels like you're in a foreign world with different terms, different languages, different lingo. Jargon is extremely detrimental. And so my point is, you need to take some time to reflect on those terms, and you need to banish jargon for new folks, especially early on. Have a process there. For the sake of time, I'm not going to have you do this, but on your worksheet, everyone has a worksheet, there's a space there, and I encourage you to do this at some point. Just reflect, spend a few minutes reflecting, write out your jargon words that stick out in your mind, those technical terms, right, that your folks are probably throwing around without thinking about it, but are unintentionally creating barriers for your new trainees, right? So with more time, I would have you do that. That'd be a great follow-up piece of assignment. Let's go to part 2. The second way to to break the curse of knowledge is to show, don't tell. Show, don't tell. This is super important, very valuable. And from the training world that we're from, we were even trained up in this idea of different learning styles and different things like that. I'm sure you're familiar, like you've heard some people are auditory learners or tactile kinesthetic or whatever. And there is a lot of research behind that, but the research isn't super great on like people are one thing versus another. It's actually, everyone's visual. Visual helps everyone, right? Auditory helps everyone. Maybe someone has more tendencies than another, but by and large, seeing something, talking about something, getting hands-on with something, mixing those opportunities is the best way to get people to grow and understand something. And let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to give you a scope of work on the screen, and I kid you not. You know, at Fisher Homes, we have 71 scopes for every part of the house, right? And every one of them reads exactly like this. And you know what one of the tasks are for one of our new folks? Go read the scopes. You got to know the scopes. Have you read the scopes? It's in the scope. Like, what's PSI of this concrete slab in the garage? It's in the scope. Have you read the scope? Right? Yeah, I read the scope. Yeah. But it's just technical. And let me give you a feeling of what that feels like. And again, if you know it, and you picked up that scope and you've been working in concrete for 20 years, you would just go, oh, hey, you're fine. You're totally fine. If you've been working in concrete for 20 years and you pick up that scope, it's like you have the song in your head. You read it pretty easily, right? So let me show you what it feels like. So read this scope that I wrote up. Can everyone see it? Can you see it in the back, Jerry? Yeah. Okay. Here's my challenge to you. Read this scope. Try to tell me what it's telling you to do. I know we got some technical people in here. I'd love to just hear some ideas. Maybe someone will get it. What is it teaching you to? What's it telling you to do?
Pulling a shim.
Huh?
You're pulling a shim.
Pulling a ship? Okay.
Shim.
Shim. Okay. Pulling a
I
shim.
did my letter resignation as the first sentence.
I like the shim one. That's not bad.
The shim? Okay. Any other ideas? Now you got shim in your head, so you're like, yeah.
You could do it to put a grade on a garage slab or something. Pin it up and then pour it.
I'd say a column replacement.
A column replacement on a porch, right? Or something like that? Yeah?
Setting up a ladder and changing a light bulb.
Setting up a ladder, changing a light bulb? You're trying to get inside my head. I see what you're doing there. Okay. All right. But let me show you a picture. I'm going to show you the exact same scope, but I'm going to show you a picture and see what a difference it makes. Look at this. Now read it again. Right? But I mean, if you had no context, I mean, what if I literally pulled this up and then you read this one time or a couple times, or even if you had it in front of you and I said, what do you do after you've engaged the support? What's after the engaging or disengaging the contact points? I don't know, right? But when you have the context, right, it makes a world of difference. And so what's the big aha moment? What's the big takeaway here? That again, it's the curse of knowledge that when folks draw up instructions, training documents, those technical scopes that you write in your job, you are not thinking like a novice. You're thinking like an expert. And to you, it makes total sense. And I've literally sat in rooms for hours with the experts arguing about how it should be exactly phrased the exact same way. And it ends up being an 11-page scope, right? And then we're just giving it out to new people and then pulling our hair out with frustration, like, we wrote it exactly the way it's supposed to be.
How many times do you send a client a scope of work? They signed off on it, and you're in the middle of a job, you're like, it was in the contract, you read this, we said this is what we were gonna do.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, well, a lot of times what we're doing, and at Fisher, that's what we're, like the homeowner, right? So much of what I'm trying to get them in the mindset of, like, you have to train and educate your customers too, right? This is a great application, you know? And so what are the ways that we can show, don't tell, right? I think it goes back to the gradual release model. It's a great example of this. Walking them to the job, walking the jobs with the folks, right? One of the things that I did is I built a scope of work journal that we're not telling people just go read the scopes. They have to read the scopes, reflect on things that stuck out to them. They have to have an opportunity to ask questions about it. They have to document every scope, where they saw it and what job site, what date. They have to see it. Like, they can't just read the concrete scope. They have to go see it and then have it next to it. And then they also have to dialogue with an expert on it. There's this 3 ways. Read it yourself, reflect on it, see it in real life, talk to an expert about it. It's like we're trying to show, don't tell. And you got to do that with many, many things, more things than you would think. Otherwise, you're just constantly frustrated. That you have folks that have seen it, they've heard you say it, all these things. But if you are just telling, you're not showing, you're going to find yourself victim of the curse of knowledge constantly. So again, another takeaway assignment for you. On your sheet, we won't do it now for the sake of time because I want to make time for our last activity because I think it's the most meaningful. Take a few minutes to reflect on a task, a job. Think about ways that you can show and not tell, right, through that task, whatever that may be, right? That could be a conversation. That could be seeing it on a job. That could be just some pictures. One picture made a world of difference here, right? I went through all of our scopes at Fisher. Guess what? Not a single illustration. Not a single one. And not only that, this is the thing that we're running into constantly. The scopes are really, the scopes aren't really for the field manager. The scopes are for the trades, right? We give the scopes to the trades, and that's some manager somewhere in an office that conveys it to their folks that are on the job, and it's just lost in translation. And the field manager's furious all the time, like they don't do it right. They don't get it. We just did a whole video series where it was like a big aha moment. We're like, why don't we put these in Spanish for some of our folks that don't speak English very well, right? Like, have we ever thought about that? You know what I mean? Just like all of those things are breakthrough moments, but they're so simple. But they really stem from just like, well, we have a whole set of scopes that have every instruction in the world, and they still don't get it right. Good. All right. This is the last part, and it'll end with an activity, and this is what I think is the most beneficial of the day, the biggest breakthrough, kind of what Rhett was talking about, that connection. One of the biggest breakthroughs that people need to have to break the curse of knowledge is to not train autobiographically. I know that sounds maybe that isn't as apparent. Can anyone tell me what you think that means? What do you think that means when I say that? Don't train autobiographically. How you learned it. Isn't that our go-to for everything? This is the way I clicked for me. This is the way I learned it, right? We are dealing with this constantly with our folks. And again, it's the way that the culture within our organizations reinforce this constantly. You're the best at this, therefore you're the trainer. And they're trying to train people. And maybe you get lucky and you find someone that has the same experience as you, the same background, the same culture, the same whatever. Maybe you hit the jackpot in the world, right? And that person clicks the way that you learned it. But then you're excluding the vast majority of people that don't think, don't have the same background, don't have the same context, same paradigms. One of my favorite quotes is from Stephen Covey. If you guys have ever read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, great book. This is one of his big ideas. When you present your own ideas clearly in the context of a deep understanding of the other person's paradigms and concerns, you increase your credibility of your ideas. You have to take that expert knowledge that you have, but you have to put it in their context. How do they need to learn it? How do your folks on the job learn or need to learn? What are their needs? Not only does this happen on an individual basis, but we've been talking about culturally, the culture around trade work and learning within trade work has just changed dramatically. The folks that we're getting on the job and the context that they walk onto the job with is 100% different than the way it used to be a decade ago, right? Or even shorter than that maybe, right? But the idea is we've got to connect with our people and put things in their context. Now, this is one of the big lessons, and this is what I run into all the time with our guys. When they're getting ready to train someone, what I see is they have a frustration, they have something they're passionate about. They show up to a kind of a training conversation with a soapbox in their back pocket. It's like, boom, here's my soapbox. They put it down, and like I've watched them, they'll stand on that footer and lecture for 45 minutes about this and that. This is the way it needs to be, and don't do it like that. Or like, I've had 20 customers call me complaining about this thing right here, and if you would only learn that. And then what I have to try to convince them of is, when you're pulling out that soapbox and you put it down and you stand on it, your folks retain very little of whatever content, connection to the other person. So here's the last activity. This will be our last thing of today. You've been in pairs, but I want you to get in groups of 4. You need to be in groups of 4 for this activity, okay? And this is an active listening activity here, all right? So you got the back of your sheet here, if you guys could pull that out. And one of the biggest things that I have got to teach people to do, our managers, our construction managers and otherwise, when they train new folks, is don't train autobiographically, lecture less, listen more. Let other people have more opportunity. Dialogue more than you talk. If you're talking more than 50% of an interaction with someone in a training environment, they are retaining very little, right? You're having very little impact. And so, this is what we're going to do. You're going to be in groups of 4, and each one of you is going to share, and this is what you're going to share. You're going to take turns sharing the most serious problem facing you, your work, or your organization. Could be anything. Could be training related, could be not training related. I just want to get you talking. That's the biggest idea. What's the biggest problem, most complex problem, biggest frustration? What's the biggest frustration, challenge that you're running into in your work, in your organization, overall? So reflect on that for a minute. Each of you is going to take 3 minutes to share that, get talking for 3 minutes. But here's what the other 3 people are going to do. 1, you're not going to fix it. How often are people just listening to reply? And man, trade workers are fixers. They're problem solvers. It's black and white. You got a problem? Boom, fix it. You got a problem over here? That's what you got to do. Right? It's just, we're not listening to listen and understand. We're listening to talk and share and fix, right? But again, your effectiveness increases the more you listen and empathize, right? That's what this active listening activity is going to be. So while one person's sharing, here's what the other 3 people are doing. One person's sharing, most serious challenge they're working with right now. One person is listening, and you're listening for whatever facts that you can hear, and you got a facts column on here. And you're going to take note. What are the facts of what they're sharing? Just facts. The other person's going to be listening for values. What values do you hear in what they're sharing? Do you hear the value of hard work, honesty, integrity, anything? Anything that you would identify as a value in anything that they share. The third person is going to be listening for any kind of emotions. Happy, angry, sad, whatever, right? And you're just going to be listening. You're going to be doing nothing but listening. And I know that itch, that fixer itch is going to be in your mind. And you're even going to be tempted afterwards like, hey, man, you remember you told me that thing? I'm going to tell you how you can fix that right now. And you're like, fight that urge. We're not here to fix. We're just here to listen, okay? And so you're going to take note. And then after 3 minutes, I'll tell you time. Sharer, you'll stop. The other 3 people, you're going to recite back what you heard. One will share, these are the facts I heard. These are the values I heard. These are the emotions I heard. And then we'll take turns and everyone will have a chance to share. Everyone will have a chance to listen with the filter of facts, listen for values, listen for emotions. That fair? Can you think of any questions for me on that? Good? All right. All right, so get in your groups. So we got 4 right here. We got 4 back there, 4 over here, and then you guys want to be 4 right there? All right. We'll start wrapping up our day, guys. So, so how'd it go? Terrible? Terrible? Man. Yeah.
We fixed everybody.
Fixed it? we solved all the issues, yeah.
I'm interested to find out if people felt, since everybody got to listen to facts, listen to values, and listen to emotions, if people found that one was easier or more difficult.
That's a great reflection quote. What do you guys think about that? What was the hardest one?
Facts.
Facts was the hardest? Really? Emotions the hardest? Why was facts the hardest? For you guys?
I kept wanting to associate a feeling or a value to a word.
Yeah.
Versus just recording.
Yeah.
Because I'm a fixer.
But doesn't that happen all the time? People come to you and it just heightens the emotion. You go to find out, it's like, it's fine, right? You know what I mean? Like this is something I deal with our field managers all the time. They're getting the calls. Need you down here on this job right now, right now, right now. So they stop what they're doing, go down there and like, oh, I figured it out. It's like, oh, you know, like, but if we just stop for a minute and go like, what's happening? What's really going on? Would help a lot. So facts was hardest. Anyone else? Like which one was the easiest?
Facts.
Facts for you guys, okay. The opposite, okay.
No wonder you sit on that side.
Little flips, but it shows you how different people are, right? Like, so what was the hardest for you guys?
For us, it was emotions.
Emotions? Yeah? Yeah?
I shouldn't speak for everybody, but I think it was. I tried to put some out there like I was being empathetic.
So let me ask you this. When you were the listener, did you feel that like, I want to fix it? Or this is the other one, did you feel that need to go, or maybe you even did it, like, same thing happened to me, I was doing this and that, you know, like you just wanted to bring your own experience into it, rather than just understanding? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm terrible with that. I mean, I have
He
to
is.
start. I dominate conversations. I'm terrible at listening. I have to start fixing it. It shows up in my personal life. It shows up in my work life.
Sure.
I was doing it here. We cheated a lot because of me.
Let's recognize it. Remember, like we're talking about, step 1 is recognizing it. Step 2 is managing it. But you got to understand it first. Yeah.
One way that can help cure you that a little bit, or at least it did for me, and I probably was one of the world's worst, I always had to have a Me Too story.
Yeah.
And I had a friend, gosh, more than 50 years ago, an old girlfriend, and one time she just said to me, can't I just have one experience in my life that you don't have the equal or top it or whatever?
And you were like, I felt the way you did once. Let me tell you.
And you know, years and years years ago, but I at least catch myself sometimes, and it's like, I don't need to tell that story.
Yeah.
Yeah, the instant fix or the guy thing, if you start fixing it before they finish telling you what's
Yeah.
wrong.
100%. Yeah.
And it's an automatic reflex, but, you know, I don't have employees, so I'm not doing that to somebody, but I can imagine as an employee, that's gotta be really deflating.
Sure. Of course. Yeah, what'd you have back there?
I think the overall picture is sometimes when you're telling a story, you're telling the story of what the struggle actually is.
Hmm.
And other people's takeaway from that is different than your vision of that story. And it was interesting to sit here and talk about that and then get the feedback, and the feedback was directly parallel to what you were saying.
Hmm.
I thought that was,
Yeah,
to
that.
me, it was very good.
Let's flip that. How did it feel when people would recite back to you and they weren't trying to fix it, they were just telling you what they heard? And can anyone share about what that experience was like?
Actually, it was, I think, and maybe this is just me and my own self, but I felt like it was more deflating than encouraging.
Really? Why?
It felt like they were recycling, and I was like, oh, I should know the answer on how to fix this then. Because it's just that simple. Oh, it's just my feeling on this. I do know better.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
That was interesting to hear somebody try to determine what's valuable to me or what I'm feeling or the main facts that I was trying to portray. And when it was off, I felt like you feel a little bit like, that's not what I meant, or that's
Sure.
not what I was saying.
Oh, yeah.
That was kind of
So kind of like, that's not what I was trying to convey, but it's kind of eye-opening, but that's what you heard,
yeah,
right?
that's
Like,
what you're-
so maybe you can go like, bummer, like I wish I was better at communicating a little bit, but I mean, I hope that there was a little part of you that was just like, it felt good to just like say it and to hear people are listening, right? I mean, that's part of it also, and I know there's a reflection on yourself there. But the big idea here, and I need to make sure I say this, we're not trying to become Dr. Phil, right? That's not what we need. That's not what you need to do. But the thing that you absolutely have to do, if you want to effectively train people, is you have to get inside their heads. It has to be about them, not about you, right? It can't be about your experience, how you did it, what's right, what's wrong. It has to literally, you have to let go of that. And that's hard too, because if you're the expert, right? I was with a guy yesterday, and he was just like, it was so funny. I was literally passing him at Fisher, and I was like, "You excited for the Bengals game? Bengals game tonight?" He's like, "Oh, I don't watch Bengals." And I was like, "Well, why?" I was just curious why. But he's like, "I don't watch any sports," and he had his own feelings about it, right? But it was interesting. What he said was, and this whole generation's going down the toilet. I mean, that's just one thing, like, and it's sports, it's TV, it's this and that. But it was just this bias, right? He's obviously got an issue with the generation, with the culture. You see all these articles about millennials and Gen Z. What's after millennials? Gen Z, right? Right? And you got to let that go and just accept that they're different from you in a lot of different ways. And if you're going to be effective, you really just got to understand them, put things in terms that they can understand. So again, go back. We said manage your jargon, banish that jargon. So take a few minutes and think about what are those terms that are just being thrown out carelessly that could be creating barriers. The next thing you got to do is show, don't tell. You got to go more than just telling. You got to get hands-on. You got to get visual. You got to think about ways to do that, right? And I'll call back that gradual release model. But the other thing, honestly, you got to talk less in training situations than you think you do. You got to literally start learning to shut your mouth in training situations. You'd be way better off asking a question, letting them do it and make a mistake. That's one of the biggest challenges for a tradesman. Watching someone do the thing that you're amazing at and just suck at it in front of you, you just want to, it bothers you, right? But you got to let them make mistakes. You got to let them get hands-on. You got to create a dialogue. You got to listen. You got to just create opportunities, not just lecturing them. learning opportunities, right? That's the big idea. And a big part of that is just listening. Okay, so that's all I got for you, folks. I know we're right at time, so let me just go ahead. The last thing I have for you, and then if you got to go, just fill this out and you can take off. If you want to stick around a little bit later, that's fine too. But we'd love to get your feedback on the survey. If you could take out your camera phone, just hold up the camera to that. It'll open up a survey. Take a few minutes and fill that out. And Jerry, I ended up taking some of Olivia's questions and incorporating on that, so I'll get you that data afterwards.
Okay, great.
Thought it'd be easier just have it all in one place. And once you got this filled out, you're good to go. Thanks for being here. See you next month. And stick around if you want to chat a little bit